Do you wanted to become a front-end expert? Do you wanted to crack your upcoming front-end system design interview? So if you are a fresher or a senior, you don't know what are the things that you should know as a fresher or a senior, how much depth you should go, from where you should study. So we are going to talk about all of these things in depth by talking about what are the things which are required for fresher, what are the things required for senior people, going into taking a lot of examples. So please stay tuned with the new interesting video of front-end system design. See till the end, and please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button before you move on. So let's get started. So guys, we are going to talk about what are the things, what matters in the front-end system design. So we'll start from, so if we have two systems, like you have a browser, which is your application, and you have a server. So they have to communicate. So in order to communicate, there will be some way to communicate. There will be some techniques to communicate. So we are going to talk about all of them. So first of all, if I talk about, you should know about networking. So in networking, if I have to simply say what are the things that you should know, so probably I will try to divide networking in two parts, where the first part basically as a fresher, as a early engineer, I will say early engineer or fresher, what are the things that you should know, and as a senior engineer, what are the things that you should know. So let's get into that. So when we say networking, two system has to communicate. Now what are the critical things? First of all, if you are a senior person, junior person, how does it matter? One thing that you should know very 100%, which is how web works. So when I say how web works, when you go and type maybe linkedin.com/engineer Chirag or your own profile, what happens exactly under the hood? When you type google.com, what happens under the hood, right? There are so many things which are happening under the hood. I will give a quick overview of how basically things works. If you reload this page or you actually enter this page, there is some request that goes. If we see this waterfall model, right, there is something which is happening on the browser. Now browser is basically sending some request, and then finally you get some content, and that in content you have something called your response as an HTML. Now this HTML have lot of CSS, JavaScript and whatnot that need to be loaded, images that need to be loaded and finally render on your screen. So there are so many things happening under the hood. There are multiple other things which are happening, like we send this is linkedin.com, but somehow it got to know, oh, this is the IP address of this particular thing. So how entire thing is basically working is something you should know as a early engineer, like how things are connected, what's the role of your router, what's the role of your ISP, what's the role of our DNS, like when to reach to the server, how to reach to the server, how fast we can reach to the server, all of these things, how that is happening. Now if you are a senior engineer, you should also know when you get this HTML, CSS, JavaScript, how your rendering happens. So when I say how your rendering happens, so your rendering of web page is something which is very important. When I say rendering of web page, I'm talking about you should know what is this DOM, what is this CSS OM, how this paint basically happens, how this basically render tree basically get generated. You should know how this computation basically happens. When I say computation, it's a cumulative shifting and whatnot that happens. So what I meant by all of these things which happens once you get this data, right? This all of these things which is happening, which you part of it basically, see you have some computed properties, you have a lot of layout related information, how these layouts are basically generated, right? So in short, basically I will say in computing, I will better say it how your layouting basically happens. So that is something that you should know as a senior engineer in and out, because this is going to help you to make your web application more performant. Okay, so next thing basically which I will talk about, you should know about different protocols. So when I say different protocols, so you may be knowing about multiple protocols. So you may be knowing about something like we talk on top of HTTP, like the server client communication happens on HTTP. There is something called which is HTTPS. There is again few things which I have introduced, which is like HTTP. So I will say you should know what is this HTTP2, what is this HTTP3, how this TCP UDP basically works and what's a delta between them. You should know fundamentals about, okay, how this SMTP server basically works, how this FTP server basically works, file transfer protocol, right? So some fundamental understanding about that you should know as a senior developer. And junior developer, if you know HTTP, HTTPS, how they work, like if you see this is an HTTPS. So if you see this is HTTPS, and some of them is HTTP, which is not secure. So just go peep into that, which is going to help you to understand web better. Now, once you know that, then you should know that there are multiple ways to communicate. One of the ways I will say is REST API. As a junior developer, you should know that. As an early stage developer, you should know that. The more thing, which is your GraphQL. What is this GraphQL is? How does GraphQL play picture? What is the important role of this GraphQL? The fundamental, at least you should know how to use it. So how to use it, you should know it. Like how to use APIs, REST APIs, you should know. How to use the GraphQL, basically you should know. Now, if you're a senior developer, you should know how to create or contribute, especially contribute in REST API. Especially, I have to talk about, you should know about multiple headers that you have. Like, what is this content type for? What does it matter? You should know, I will say, a lot of status codes. You should know different kind of methods. Although knowing basic fundamental method is something which is also responsibility of a early developers, but as a senior developer, you cannot compromise on that. Similarly, if I talk about GraphQL, so in GraphQL, if you are a senior developer, then you should know about this query and mutation in depth. Like you should be able to create those. You should be able to contribute to those. You should know about what is this data loader. You should know about like how this batching concept basically works using GraphQL. So these are certain things that you should know. You cannot compromise on that. Now, if you are a person who wanted to scale, you wanted to see what are the different other ways in order to do this communication, I will recommend go and also learn about bit about the gRPC. Although it is not directly used in the client, but server to server communication for making your application 10x performant. This is very, very powerful and helpful. Okay, let me talk about something interesting. You should also know about something called communication techniques. So when I say communication techniques, so multiple things happen. Communication. Okay, so communication technique. So multiple things happens. So like we say, if we have to do this chat thing is something which is real time. Now, making the chat real time, there are many things that can be done, right? So n number of things basically are done. So there, I will tell you before I jump into even the communication technique, let me show you one simple thing. Say suppose if I'm searching for Chirag Goel over here, you will see there is a request which went as an GraphQL request. You see, these are all GraphQL requests. If you see how the data is basically returned, you see how the data, how these things requests are made. It is like someone is searching for this, right? So all of these interesting things are done over here. Let me show you the last request which I sent, the query which was Chirag, right? So if you are a senior developer, this is must. Like nowadays, people are using GraphQL to the last extent. Now, coming back, we were talking about early stage. This is early engineer, and I will mention it as a senior engineer. Okay, so in case of this, again, few things that you should always, the must know kind of thing. If you're an early stage engineer, you should know how at least I can get real time data. You use any technique, hardly matter, real time data. So you may be knowing about short polling, which is keep on polling on an interval using set interval kind of thing. So short polling is something you should know. You should be at least not knowing into much more detail, but at least you should know how to consume WebSockets. Like you cannot compromise on this. You should, there is no other option. Now in today's world, you must know how to consume at least. Now, if you are a senior developer, then you should also know about long polling. You should be also knowing about server sent event. You should be able to basically contribute in WebSocket basically. You should know about webhooks. Like there are no alternative for that. You should know, you should be able to contribute on all of these things. That is a kinda must basically for a senior developer as you grow in your career. Now, once you know about how to communicate things, how to do certain things, now there are multiple other things that comes into the picture. Now, let me tell you, let me copy this and basically show you what are the other things. Now comes two important parameter which I personally feel is very important in system design. Almost all the system design touch upon these concepts. One is the security and second aspect is the performance. We will talk about both of these aspects very importantly. Now we should understand, if you are an early stage in your career, you should know about few things. One, how to do the input and output sanitization, you can say. What does it mean? What does it mean? Let's understand. Say suppose I am typing something over here, or probably say suppose I am going to make a post over here. So if I go over here, I need to create a post. So when I create a post, I can actually literally put anything over here. It can be a script, it can be some hacky code, it can be something to steal some information. Now consider example, if I put this data, now this my post is going to be visible to all other world like my connection and whatnot. And if this is a code which can execute on their system, then there is a high chances that I can steal the information from that. How can I ensure that this data which we get is sanitized data? And also in case we are not entering, someone is entering from the database, somehow that data got entered. Then when it is rendering, it treats as a normal text, it does not treat as a script. How we can do that? So basically that input output sanitization is something which is very important. You should know. Then you should know about XSS attack. Like at least not to a very large extent, but at least know that, okay, all the possible kind of input like input, URL param, anything which can take the user input, how I ensure that it does not add a external script and does not execute on the system. That is very, very important, guys, very important. You should know that. Then CSRF token, you should know basic fundamental about that. So when I say CSRF token, it's a cross it's a cross resource sharing kind of thing, forgery basically. What I meant by cross site resource forgery, this is something we have to understand. We get a lot of these offers. You get an iPhone, become crorepati and whatnot, and we randomly believe on the sites basically which does not belong, which we are seeing for the first time. Don't get into trap of those things, and try to shield your website so that even someone is trying to tweak it and get user credential and authentication and try to mimic things that they should not be able to mimic, right? Then you should actually know the importance of HTTPS, and you should use the HTTPS, which is very, very important. So these are certain things. And one more, how can I forget that? The CORS. When I especially say CORS, example, I will show you something interesting over here. So when we say CORS, if you go to this website, if I'm searching for example, Apple. So let's see the request which went. It is an auto suggest request. Right now we are on a flipkart.com/grocery. The request which went is 1.rom.api.flipkart.com, which browser does not allow. Browser does not allow you cross communication, cross browser, cross domain communication. But it says, okay, you are still allowed. Someone is actually taking care of the security. Someone is allowing it. Browser is actually not allowing it. Someone is allowing it. How that CORS basically works is something that you should know as an early stage. Now, when you become a senior, then there are so many things that you should be very good at that. So one thing is you should be very good at auth. You should understand how this authentication authorization basically works. What's a role of, what's a benefit of all of these things you should know. Like there is no other alternative for this auth. Other thing, there are so many other security headers that you should know. So when I say security headers, when you're setting cookie, you have HTTP only, you have secure key, so many other things that happens that you should know basically what these headers are, what it is important for. You should know, like as a senior developer, you should know about CSRF. Like so when we say about this is server side request forgery, someone was able to enter into your private network and screwed up your network. How you can avoid that? Then you should also know about something called SRI, which is one of my favorite. Basically, if you go to get bootstrap will show you something. So in get bootstrap, let me go to doc getting started. Whenever you see the script has to be injected, there is something called integrity basically. What does integrity basically play a role? How does it ensure the security of the data, right? That is something that you should know how basically these things are working. Now, other thing basically, if I have to say that, then we have something called permissions policy. Please go look for what is this permission policy, like what are the things basically can be done. Two more things which I will say, you should know about compliances, because many companies are screwed up because of some developers who did not think about the compliances, the regulation basically which they have. The government have, the internet basically, WWW have, right? Web3 have, what I meant by. If you are not taking care of, then there are chances. The last thing which I will say is the dependency security. When you are doing npm-i blindly, doing npm-i, it will install some dependency. That dependency will have some dependency, and our feature is working. How does that matter to me? but it will matter if there is some vulnerability issues, not directly in your dependency, but inside the dependency of dependency. Then that becomes critical, because if your application is dependent on that like library as a core business and it has vulnerability, then your business may get compromised. So be cautious whenever basically you are taking any dependencies. And as a senior developer, please must basically go and look into those things. Okay. Now, let me talk about some more interesting topics. One of, again, my favorite is something which is called performance. Now, people underestimate the performance sometimes, and people think, oh, performance, then interviews. Performance is like, oh, I need to get into interviews and basically I'm good. We have to understand there are few things that we should know why performance is important. Like, importance of performance is very necessary. Then we should know the metrics that need to be tracked basically in order to get to know if my website is performant or my website is not performant. Like, how do I identify if something is performant or not performant? There should be some way to prove it. So those are something which are metrics. Now, once you know those metrics, then the other things which matters basically how I can optimize it. Now, there can be multiple places need to be optimized. One, when you are building your application itself, basically, then itself you can take care of a lot of optimization thing, right? Because if you ship something which is screwed up, nothing can be done. So build is something very important. Second is when it is coming via the network, when it is actually traveling from server to the client, in the network layer you can optimize it. Maybe some tweak, some compression, some spatial header, some multiplexing, a lot of things basically can be done basically on the network layer. Then you have something called asset optimization. So you have assets. Assets are the bulkiest thing that takes a lot of time, that hits the performance a lot. How you can optimize that in order to make your application load much faster, and the experience, the perceived performance that you give becomes next level. So that is something that you should take care of. Now, few things are language dependent. Like, you should know how to optimize the JavaScript optimization. Now, there are few things like which are framework dependent. Can I use React techniques basically in order to optimize a part of my application so that something is optimized by different layer? That will make things much more better. Now, if I have to talk about few things what a senior developer or junior developer basically should know, I will help to differentiate this. So there are few things which junior developer hardly basically knows. I will explicitly mention that. Senior developer, these are things which are must know. Like, you cannot compromise on that. You should know how to do a build optimization, network optimization, asset optimization. You should know about the JavaScript optimization. You should know, get into much depth. You should know about performance tools as well. Like, what are the different tools I can use in order to optimize it? If you are early stage, you can just depend on you can start your career with knowing basic, you can say, performance tool. You should know how to monitor this performance monitoring. Start with that. Start with tweaking with your framework in order to make it more better. And once you get early, like when you grow in your career, you keep on getting into more detail of the internals of thing, like where you are not just dependent on framework. You change the framework. Tomorrow there is no React, there is something else. Then if you have this foundations, which are solid foundation, then no one can replace you. Framework will come, framework will keep on going, hardly matter. Now, early stage developer, especially senior, I will say you should know one more thing, which is your rendering patterns. So this actually matters. So when I say rendering pattern, you should know when to do client side rendering, when to do server side rendering, when to do static side generation, when to do React server component kind of thing, right? So many things are there. You should know when to use, what to do, how can be basically this be done. So these are certain things. Okay, I will tell you one resource basically which you can do. In past, basically, I have recorded a lot of stuff which you can see. This is especially a section where lot of these things basically exist, like how to optimize your network layer, how to optimize your assets, how to optimize your JavaScript in order to basically do that. So like this will give you fair understanding, although for more depth there are a lot of courses like Namaste front-end system design is there, right? So you can always go into those detail, but at least start with your fundamental understanding, then keep on going deeper in order to have a great understanding, become a front-end expert. That is what I say. Okay, now the next thing basically, again, one of my favorite, most of the people don't know what is this caching and where this caching basically can be done. Like, how does it matter? So I will talk about caching and database. Many people actually ask me how the front end doesn't have databases, and that's give me a interesting vibe. Oh, seriously, dude, like you don't know, like we have databases in front end also. So few things we'll understand. First, we'll talk about some databases. Like, you should know, man, about local storage. Like, there is no excuse for that. If you're a early stage developer, you should know what it is. You should know about cookie. You should know how to use it. If you're a senior developer, you should know about session storage. Like, when I say fundamental understanding is required for both the thing, for both the developer, but you should have used this as a session storage. No doubt in that. You should have used IndexedDB. If you are a senior developer, may not be a big application. Maybe you know why we are using it. It is asynchronous basically. It has performance thing. So many things. Basically, you can index things, you can query things, you can make your query faster, you can build offline applications, many things that comes into the picture. Now, other thing that actually you should know basically as a developer, you should know basically how this, even I will recommend, most of the people are not able to define their states and whatnot as a junior developer because they don't know how this normalization basically works. Please get an understanding of how to normalize your data. Normalization, you have structured, complex, nested data. Now, how do I flatten it so that the lookups, the read and write in that database becomes very easy? How and what we can basically do. Then you should know about, as a senior developer, that the few things that become must. How do you cache things at network? So HTTP caching, like you have something called expires, you have something called cache control, you have something called e-tag, last modified. There's so many things basically are there. How you can optimize that? How you can leverage service worker in order to cache thing? How you can leverage your API layer caching, like multiple frameworks, multiple, I will say, library provide you in-memory storage for your API data. Once loaded, now you take a decision, either I wanted to go via cache or network. So many things basically happen, you can do. Now, as a early stage, you should know how to use different state management, guys. At least Redux, context API, like different things which exist. You should have a very fundamental understanding, which is must. Like, there is no excuse in that. Now, coming again to certain things, like once you are done with your caching, you understand what to cache, where to cache as a senior developer, junior developer. The other thing which is, like, you should know about testing, man. Like, without testing, how the word will work? So as I say, if you are early stage developer, you should know unit testing. Unit testing is as simple as, you have a big application and your responsibility is to check a function which is going to check either this data is valid or not. Either the length of this post is whatever the maximum post that the length you have, like Twitter. In Twitter, you have some word that can be posted. The logic, basically, a function will just test the length of that particular thing. That can be a very small unit test, basically, if I will say. Then there are multiple other kind of tests that you should know. One of the tests, basically, I will recommend that everyone should have an understanding about, which is test driven development. In early stage, as if you, which is we call TDD. So why I'm saying to early engineers, because if you make that habit in early stage, it becomes very easy. Once you are a senior developer, it becomes very difficult to adopt such thing, guys. People are like, why? I know how to code, I know how to test things. Why I will do a test driven development? Maybe. So for those things, I will recommend, please do that. Then we have something called end-to-end testing, that you as a senior engineer using Cypress, using Playwright, using so many other tools like you have, right? So there are n number of tools we are using, Selenium probably. Any of these tools you use in order to actually learn the end-to-end testing. It is going to help you sometime. Like, if I remember, even in my past companies, what I have done, I have written a lot of test cases, basically in end-to-end test cases, which is, say, suppose you have to do the login or you have to do a sign up. How does it matter? Like, if your UI is working perfectly fine, if your API is working perfectly fine, the intent is sign up should happen. User should land and you should be able to sign up and then log in. That's all. What happened, what tech stack you have used, who have contributed in which part, who owns the API, who owns the backend, hardly matter. The intent is very clear from the business. When I will load, I will try to mimic as a user. My system will operate will try to fill all the form, try to do submit, and finally will validate if the user data exists on the database or not. My job is done. So that is kind of thing basically we wanted to understand. Now, there are a lot of things that you should also understand. One thing which I will say is not actually kind of a testing which is a developer oriented. This AB kind of testing is more around product side of thing. Like you should understand how your product, how your users are behaving, if user is liking something or disliking. So you create kinda 50-50. For 50% user I will serve this, 50% user I will serve this, and this is used a lot in so many, you can say, industries. Then you have something called component testing. Like if you have a component testing for a junior developer, if you're a junior developer, you are creating a small component, a button, a form. If that button form is actually working perfectly fine, if it is rendering your UI pixel perfect or not, all of these things comes in the you can say component testing. Did you handle error state, loading state, when you have the data, when the data is less, like so many things basically come. All of these things has to be tested in your basically testing over here. Now, few things I wanted to highlight, which is again very interesting module, which I personally feel like you should know about offline support. Like when I especially say offline support, few things again, which is if you go to your, where's that application? So in application, you have something called IndexedDB. In IndexedDB, you have lot of things basically that can be done. So if you try to go and open your web.whatsapp.com and open the same tab, which is IndexedDB, you will see the huge table, whatever messaging you are doing in your WhatsApp, you will see a lot of information already there. And if you go to like docs.google.com, which is your google.com, and you are in offline mode, you will see almost whatever activity you're doing, it's there in the Google Doc cache. So maybe I can show you, let's see, docs.new kinda. Let's go over there, open this IndexedDB. Okay, we will see Google Docs. These are a lot of data you will see, guys, lot of data. So these are a lot of data basically you have related to content in order to support the offline mode, right? So you have file entity, you have related to comments, you have related to blob metadata, you have related to pending queue, n number of things. There is syncing related, user related, hell lot of things basically you will see. So what I meant by, if you are an early stage developer, then at least you should know basics of service worker. But if you're a senior developer, you should know end-to-end service worker detail, like how that works, what tweaks can be done, where assets can be stored. Like you should know about what is this blob all about. Like because you are not going to make a network request, then how your metadata, how your assets are going to be stored. You should know about this. You should know about what is this progressive web app. When I say progressive web app, you also provide not just the offline support, but also a way to install your web application in your mobile as an application. You get an icon. Like if you have noticed, you go to the right and say that add to home screen. If you're not tried, go open any of the application and do the triple dot, see the more option in your mobile application, and you will see that option, right? This is something very interesting. You should get into better understanding of IndexedDB. You should know about like how this networking works, how the service worker basically come in between, what are the different life cycle, how these things basically can be done is something that you must know. Now coming to accessibility. So as a junior developer, you may not know about multiple things of accessibility. And sometimes in your company, accessibility is not given the priority. I understand the accessibility is not given the priority. If I have to tell you what is this accessibility, let's understand from this example maybe, guys. So if I talk about, I will go to home. So I'm at this tab. So I will click tab, guys. So you see, I am able to navigate to different tabs. So we'll close this. I am able to navigate. This is edit. Right now we came to this edit. I am going to hit enter. You see, it automatically opened my profile and all sort of thing. What I meant by, if there is a person, there are many people who wanted to use this tab and keyboard in order to access your application entirely, especially when you are building any enterprise application, when you are building any SaaS application. Most of the people prefer using keyboards. They don't prefer using mouse. and they are more kind of, you can say, first thing I will say, make them keyboard accessible. Keyboard accessibility is something which I will recommend everyone should do. Everyone should do this because it actually enhances the experience of your user. Then there is something called screen reader kind of thing, where it announces you are on this tab, you are doing this, you clicked on that. Those kind of announcement is something helpful for people who are deaf or have some hearing problem, right? So those kind of things basically you should do. Color contrast basically are something where people who have bipolarity, people who cannot see, differentiate between colors, there are people who can't see certain type of colors, right? So those kind of basically things that you should know, and you should basically go and experiment on that as a senior developer. Like, again, there is no options or alternative for that. Okay, so one thing which I will highly recommend again as a part of a system design, which is, guys, you should know about logging and monitoring. So when I say you should know about logging and monitoring, guys, you should know about fundamental thing. One is what log things. Like, you may not be able to monitor things, just log things, guys. Like, keep on adding things, as much information, what user is doing, how user is doing. If you can use some tools, please blindly use tools like GA, Sentry, whatever easiest thing that you can do in order to at least track what is happening for your user with your user is something which is very, very important. Now, if you are a senior developer, then alerting is something that you should know. You should be very good at knowing that how, if my performance goes for a toss, if my infra goes for a toss, if I'm getting so many errors, how do I track those things is very, very important. Then comes with the fixing. You should, if you are a senior developer, then you should know how to prioritize things, how to debug things, how to mitigate things, how to avoid these things to happen in future, like how to prevent these things. Guys, if you are doing, if you are just implementing features as a senior developer, then you are not doing justice to your application, trust me, guys. And you should double think if you are not doing logging and monitoring in the right fashion. Now, one thing which I will recommend, once you are done with all of these, guys, once you are done with all of these things, let me show you something. Like how generally questions are going to be asked in your interviews. So guys, let's see what I meant by. So generally your interviews are going to be two part, where either you are going to be asked in a LLD, which is this part, or high level design, which is this part, right? Now these, you see, whatever we have covered is something which is non-functional requirement. In your interviews, when you go through system design round, it will talk about, oh, functional requirement, whatnot. They are going to deep dive into some of those non-functional requirement that we talked about. If you are very good at those fundamental, those are going to be questions which are 100% going to be asked, and you should chip in into some of these non-functional requirement 100% in order to master things, in order to take your interview experience and the feedback that you are going to get is to the next level, that you should know basically. So these are things which we talked about that will help you to master. Second thing is, now how do I actually practice all of those things? What to speak, how to speak, when to speak? For that, I will recommend you do one thing, which is please go and learn about few applications. Like if I talk about, okay, I will maybe mention in this fashion. Please go and learn. This is for everyone. This is for everyone. Please go learn about LLD. As a junior developer, LLD is must. There is no alternative for that. And a senior developer, I will say go for HLD. So go for few HLDs as a diverse HLDs, guys. So first I will say diverse HLDs. You should know how your feeds, like Facebook feeds kind of thing basically works. Such application. That is one of the popular basically kind of a question which is 100% going to be asked. There is no alternative to that. You should know some of those things, like how your drawing tool using Canvas basically works. You should have an understanding of that. You should know some of the application which uses the live commentary, which uses polling, WebSocket and whatnot, that how basically that works. You should know some fundamentals regarding applications which uses lot of media, like photo sharing app, like it can be Instagram, right? You should know about video streaming platform. So some of them like Netflix and whatnot, and few of them I will say you should know about like how this Google Doc kind of thing basically works. Like if you are aware of these things, then trust me guys, at a high level, most of the complex interviews you can easily crack, most of them. Again, the more experience, more kind of complex thing can be asked, which you need lot of more practice. But at a high level, you will start understanding what this high level design is basically, how to answer those things in the question, how to go with the interview flow, how to basically change the flow basically, which is there in the interviews. Then in case of LLD, this is machine coding round, which is going to be asked almost in all the interviews. You should know how to do the state management, guys. Like you should be very good at state management. Without that, it doesn't work. You should know how this routing thing basically works. You should know a bit about solid principles, like how to write clean code, how to write better code, right? Reusable code, right? So many things. Then you go and practice some of the thing. When I say practice, my favorite is you start with autocomplete. You do tic-tac-toe game type thing. You build something called to-do app, right? You go basically work on pagination. You go work on something called carousel, image carousel, right? Something like this, carousel. So if you have built these LLDs, then lot of things will start coming to your mind. Oh, this is how basically we should do, what need to be done. And when I say autocomplete pagination, these pagination can be both the kind, next, or it can be infinite. So what I meant by this, guys, so very important, all of these things are something which is very, very important. If you wanted to become senior developer, you wanted to become expert, you wanted to keep on growing in your front-end journey, and you don't wanted to become a person, oh, I know just how to pull the data and how to show the data on the UI. Let's change that myth together. Like as a front-end developer, we do so many cool things. It's just that sometimes we are not looking into that. We are just looking into, oh, these are the features, these are the Jira tasks that need to be completed, and we don't take things very seriously. So along with that, guys, I wanted to just convey one thing. Like there are a lot of resources which are available. You can go Google, you can learn about all those things by your own. There is no problem. There is already a series basically that is there as a publicly available. You can go and check the system design also, that you will get a fair understanding of lot of these things. There is there is Namaste React, Namaste front-end system design. You can actually go for that as well. You can always go look for Namaste front-end system design. Let me open that. So you can go to that, and me and Akshay basically have actually built a very fine tune with lot of code, lot of depth inside this particular course. If you would like, you can always start your learning over here also. It's your choice, whatever you prefer. I just wanted to communicate. These are the options that you have. You are the right person to take the right decision for your career, how you wanted to accelerate your career, how fast you wanted to go, how deep you wanted to go in your career is something. With that, I hope you liked this particular video. You get a fair understanding about the system design, what this is, how this works. Then I will recommend you, please go like, share, subscribe, share it with your friend as much as possible, so that it helps me to basically come up with more crazy cool videos on the YouTube. So with that, thanks a lot. See you again. Signing off, Chirag Goel.